So when GDPR was first mooted, I think a lot of organisations felt it was a bit of a burden on them. How does that feel now? Does it feel like maybe it's a bit of an opportunity? Maybe it gives them something that they could do better?
Yeah, from my perspective, a rising tide raises all boats. And so I think the spirit of the GDPR is to improve data protection and privacy around the world, and specifically for EU residents. And so I think from that perspective, it's good because it is trying to raise that baseline that we have around personal information. And so I think that's good. I think a lot of organizations that I talk to are taking it super seriously. And I think 2, 3, 4 years from now, as that tide continues to raise, we'll see the fruits of that because the data will be much better protected.
Right. Burden or an opportunity, Tony?
It's definitely an opportunity. If you look at it from there's multiple reasons. One, if you're looking to move, migrate into the cloud, now's an excellent time to do your data mapping because you need to know what you're going to move. So if you're going to do that, then once you've understood that, you understand how to build it better within the cloud. And also you can look at those technical and security additional controls at that point as well. So it all fits in very nicely. On the other aspect as well, it's an opportunity for getting the security right, getting the cybersecurity right, because you've got to do it as part of the GDPR. So use that for that pressure there to get those programs that you've always wanted to get done. Get those controls in within the systems and services. This is the time now to really use those opportunities.
Right. Is that an opportunity that you're seeing as well?
Absolutely, yeah. And not just from a security perspective, but you look at your personal information as an individual, yeah?
Right.
And that the growing worry for the population is no longer whether your house is going to get broken into or your car, but it's whether your identity is going to get stolen. And the more and more we become digital, everybody's online, and anybody who's online is at risk of having their identity stolen. And companies haven't taken it seriously in the past. They just haven't. So definitely an opportunity for companies and for individuals.
So we often, especially in a tech company, talk about process, and we always talk about technology, and we rarely talk about people. So perhaps you could just give us a bit of an insight as to, how does that relate to the work that you've been doing recently?
Well, I find the whole people element of security quite interesting, and some of the conversations I've had with companies. I remember about 6 months ago, I was having a conversation with an Australian entity, and they had 400 accounting firms under them. So they're holding tax file numbers, everything like that, critical information about people. They kept getting hacked. And I said, that must be you've got insider threat problem there. They said, no, it's a technology issue. I said, well, how did they get in? We had some software unpatched. Well, that's a human who was supposed to patch that software, therefore that's an insider threat. Right, because it means, and that might be driven by processes and procedures aren't in place. Right? Who writes processes and procedures? People do. So I think that when we look at insider threat, it's about, are you a malicious, disgruntled employee, or you're going to accidentally press on a phishing link. But it extends way further than that. It extends into the whole culture of an organization, from the management, from the board of directors. Everybody is involved in the security of that data. So it's something that is still, I believe, being overlooked.
Very good.
Yeah.
So Tony, you've known us as AWS for quite a long time. How does the cloud help, do you think, in terms of the GDPR and the bigger picture around security?
Well, like I said earlier, that migration will help with understanding where your data's coming in, where it's going out, and with AWS, certainly you've got all the great best practice, the security documentation, so you understand where you can put in those technical and organisational controls that the GDPR requires. And on top of that, AWS itself is a customer-centric organisation, and therefore I think this is a good opportunity for organisations who want to, or see themselves certainly as being the customer focus. They can, by putting in place all the security, utilising and leveraging those sort of best practices from organisations like AWS, enables them to put themselves forward as a sort of a leader and organisation that's putting the customer forward by securing their personal data, using all the security that's there. Right. And that actually can create in itself a sort of unique selling point to their customers as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So Tim, what would your top 3 tips for GDPR and security be?
Yeah, I think we've heard it from our guests here during this panel very well. So it's all about the data. And so understanding where data is coming into your organization, why it's coming in, what's really necessary to keep and process, and having a process for rationalizing the collection and storage and transmission of data is super important. So for many organizations, it's sort of the first time they've had to go through that rationalization process. But after that initial, bit of pain, because it'll be like building new muscle that you haven't built before, it'll get easier and easier and easier. And so, that's, I think, a good starting point that organizations have to take.
Right, very good. Well, look, sadly we're out of time, but Tanya, Tony, Tim, thank you very much indeed for your contribution and your wise words today. So join us again for future editions of In Conversation for all things GDPR.